Hello everyone, Sage with you again for Kalkine Media's Executive Corner Expert Talks. In this special edition, we have Bounty Oil and Gas NL, who's involved in the exploration and production of oil and gas in the spotlight. And the best way to find out about what they do is to sit down with the Chief Operating Officer himself, Kane Marshall. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sage.
Well, Kane, with economies switching towards greener and renewable alternatives, how do you see the future of oil and gas faring?
Well, I don't know how many people talk about this, but I think it's a boon for us. What people don't talk about is, the strategic metals that are required to go to electrification of not only vehicles, but power infrastructure in general requires a lot of energy intensive mining, export via ship. A lot of the products, for example, in say electric cars, be it rubber, plastics, glass, that all hinges on fossil fuel supply. And we've had a situation here for probably at least a decade of no new investment in oil and gas. So I think it's terrific from that perspective. Wind power is the same. Solar, you look at what solar's made out of silica, silver, various other strategic metals, is energy intensive to produce. So all the technology is not really there to bring down, your costs at scale to probably compete. But look, if that's the way the world's going, I think it's terrific. So that's probably the first part. The second part is we go into this energy transition, if that's what the world wants to do. Well, it's going to need more gas, and we're focused on gas exploration development. So I think it's terrific. We're going to need upgrade of roads because all the bitumen's going to get more heavily worn out from heavier electric vehicles. So I think it's terrific. Let's endorse it. I think it's great for the industry, and let's see if renewables can compete with fossil fuels. If they can, I think we'll still be here, and we'll be making plenty of money for shareholders.
Thanks so much, Kane, for sharing your insights. And I know when I was growing up, I was told in school that we'd be completely run out of resources by the time I hit 20 or something like that. And well, it's great to see that we've still got some, and we're finding greener and cleaner ways of mining it as the technology advances. So great to see that so many jobs will potentially be created by all these new oil and gas exploration projects. So PEP 11, offshore Sydney Basin, New South Wales, one of the most critical projects. What are the company's expectations with the project ahead, please?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's been all over the Weekend Australian, the Sydney Morning Herald. It's been on there. I think Andrew Probyn called me from the ABC a few days ago. I let David Breeze deal with the subject matter, but I find it ironic. We're purely exploring for gas. We're not exploring for oil as minority parties, as NGOs and various other activists have said we're exploring for oil, which is completely false. Geologically, there's no precursor or any story for oil exploration. It's a cleaner kind of gas with a CO2 sequestration component to it. So that forms part of your transition to cleaner energy. And then you look just next door at Newcastle, where you've got big ships burning bunker fuel, which is pretty much the worst thing for the environment, exporting coal to India and China, where it's getting burnt and providing electricity. So, from my perspective, addressing what the world wants and doing it economically and environmentally responsibly, which we've done before. We've already drilled a well there and been completely compliant. It's a little bit bemusing. So, yeah, we're a 15% partner in there. We're sort of comfortable with that equity as it is. I think it's going to be very interesting now to see what happens with what the Albanese government does, given we have a situation where the federal regulator recommended the PEP 11 be renewed. It's going to get signed off by the resource minister, and Morrison has done what he's done. So whether he's done it legally or not, that's not for me to comment, but I can certainly see a case here where it's going to turn out positively for both, Asset Energy and Bounty in the PEP 11 joint venture.
Thank you for sharing that with us. So Australia, king of the energy sources, it's just so significant that Australia's energy output and the processes that they use can make such a huge impact on a global scale. You're in such a pulsing industry. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us so we can understand a little bit better what's happening, because there's some major changes going on. Government agencies have stated that the current sources of natural gas used in New South Wales may not meet the demand of gas in the medium to long term. How can PEP 11 contribute towards this, please?
Yeah, probably just going back to, my point earlier that we're focused on clean gas exploration. The cost of electricity in the eastern seaboard are going through the roof, so it's not really a surprise that supply can't meet demand. It's again an irony we're importing fracked gas from North America, supposedly, to keep the lights on the east coast, yet we can't explore for our own natural gas in New South Wales and Victoria. And I see Andrew Forrest is creating a hub to import LNG. So, I'm not too sure when not only the mums and dads of the world and the politicians wake up that we need our own secure strategic resources of gas, which can be a very clean fuel as we transition into this cleaner energy economy. And PEP 11's there. It's off the coast of New South Wales. It's in close proximity to Sydney, so I can understand some of people's concerns, but we've always been completely compliant with all our activities. And at the end of the day, the country needs energy to keep the lights on. It needs energy to make fertilizers and domestically sourced industrial products for our agricultural businesses, for food, making sure children can sleep at night, not freezing at night. So all the basic things that are now happening in India. We don't want those sort of extremities happening here in Australia. So I think PEP 11 is important, and not only PEP 11. I think a lot of domestic gas exploration development is going to be very, very important, and we should actually have our own. It should be an energy security policy on this. So I like I say, I think with PEP 11, I think there's a lot more to play out just yet.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think these discussions that we're having now are so important, just to keep everyone informed and up to date with the information, because there's a lot of information or risk of it circulating. And like you say, lobby groups and things might be acting off maybe outdated information or something that's been interpreted incorrectly. So thank you for sharing your insights. And yes, the supply chain issues with the geopolitical factors that have been affecting UK and India, like you're saying. I mean, Australia's so lucky to be in the position that we're in. And companies like yours, may I please ask you, is Bounty Australian owned?
Yeah, we're majority owned. In the top 100, I think it's probably predominantly 70-80% Australian entities, institutional shareholders. There's a few entities out of there, interestingly enough, from North America. And I think that we're majority Australian owned and focused on domestic assets. And I think that's quite a good story. We're not in Africa, we're not in Indonesia, we're not looking for shale gas in North America. We are here in Australia and addressing a lot of these issues we've covered in terms of energy security, not only for gas, I think for oil too. I think we need our own strategic petroleum reserves, potentially for future conflicts. So I think that is, you like to be ahead of the game. I think at some point in the future, people are going to wake up and realise that we need Australian companies doing what they do best, and that's being innovative, entrepreneurial, and working in the interests of, Australians.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us and clarifying that for us. So Bounty has been inclined towards the onshore oil appraisal and development opportunities in Queensland as well. What are the key objectives of the current operations of Bounty over there?
So I think this is something the market's missing at the moment. We've got fairly significant land presence in the Surat Basin, which is predominantly over the last 1 to 2 decades been a focus for coal seam gas exploration, and we are really focused on the conventional oil and gas exploitation and exploration of the same in that area, mainly in Queensland. And what I think we're we're placed there to sort of take advantage of the fact that there in the Surat, we're sort of placed near one of the few active Australian-owned refineries that refine, domestic oil for domestic use in the inland oil refining at Eromanga. So we've got number of interests there in Spring Grove and Downlands and Alton, where Alton's an oil field that's been shut in for quite some time, and we're looking to bring that back into production, and probably not just on its own. We'd probably look to some further phases of development at Downlands and Spring Grove around the liquid story there, with a view of exploiting the gas later. Just that's more for the economies of scale and spreading operating costs over a number of assets. And I think that's going to be part of increasing our bottom line and revenue. I think we're making roughly 350,000 a month in revenue. So we'd like to double or triple that into, reasonable commodity prices where we can get offtake, and then use that, that revenue, which will then get profit margins on, to expand organically that part of our portfolio.
Great. Wow. Very exciting time to be connecting with your company. Best of luck with those projections moving forward. So as we start to wind up now, so how much action can we expect in the second half of 2022? It sounds like you're pretty action-packed at the moment as it is.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of strategic planning now around extra, or say additional appraisal and exploration drilling in the Surat Basin. Obviously, recommencing production, but trying to work out exactly the most optimal way to do that on a return of capital basis. So, we can restore oil production there cheaply and effectively, but whether it's actually going to maximize return to the assets, that's something we're working on at the moment. So there's going to be a fair bit of activity around there. We've already been talking to IOR about offtake, and some of the trickier parts of what happens with condensate associated with gas, and there's not really a lot of refinery capacity for condensates. So we're sort of focused very much there around later phase of development, the Downlands and Spring Grove gas pools, about extracting the liquids there at the same time as extracting liquids from Alton. So that's part of the news flow second half of this year. PEP 11's a funny one because it's very hard to say, because I think assets commenced proceedings in the federal court. We're considering our options. It's getting a lot of media attention. Obviously, there's a whole raft of things on the table, I suppose, be it compensation we would seek, or the license simply being reinstated. So there's a lot of, I can't really say much else there other than what everyone already knows. Other than I think the Albanese government is very pragmatic, is open to business, can see that gas is the sensible way to a cleaner energy economy. So I think, that's sort of like a bit of a plus for us. I think, I would expect a lot of positives come out of the second half of the year. We've got a presence in Western Australia. We're looking to expand our portfolio quite aggressively too. We're one of the few companies with, making production 300-400 grand a month, not a lot of overhead, focused domestically, not a lot of peers. You can probably look at Bass Oil and Triangle, we're in slightly different positions. So we're sort of in a niche there. And so in the context of microcaps and this end of the market, I think the PEP 11 thing is good for us because we're getting volume in the stock, people slowly getting across the story and saying, what else have you got in your portfolio and what else are you doing? And I think it's a great platform for us to expand at a robust commodity prices. So I think there'll be a lot happening, the remainder of this year for sure.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, because it does seem like your industry especially is in focus for the Albanese government, and a lot of money's been poured into it in regards to funding and government grants. So sounds like things could be, well on the way to progressing through the second half of this year. Thank you, Kane, for sharing your insights. Really helps us understand what's going on in this very complex industry of yours. Was there anything you'd like to share with the shareholders before we go, or the investors?
Look, I think the only thing is this was getting media coverage yesterday, the 10 new areas released in the offshore gazettal. And, I think that just supports my comments about, the Albanese government being pragmatic and being sensible when working in the economic interests of Australians. we can't just turn the taps off oil and gas, because it's going to have major supply chain issues itself for the renewable energy technology side of it. So I think that's a really good backdrop for us to be working in. I think it's an open to business mentality. So I think the change of federal governments hasn't really going to affect the industry adversely at all. I think it's a good thing. I think new governments bring fresh ideas. I think they'll address the PEP 11 thing in a fairly pragmatic way. Obviously, there's some politics at play, but I think all those things bode well for a company our size to sensibly, incrementally move the market cap up through acquisition, funding assets, funding or growth organically through revenue, and just being really smart in the face of commodity prices, because it's quite clear to me that commodity prices are only going to go one way. Inventories are coming down. Petroleum reserves in the US are almost off a cliff. And, we're almost getting into the perfect storm now where $200 oil is now becoming a conversation again. So there's a lot for shareholders to be interested in, and there's very little downside to being in the stock at these levels.
Great. Thank you, Kane, for sharing your insights with us so clearly on the position of your company. It sounds like you're very well positioned there. And if you've just joined us, that was Kane Marshall. He's the Chief Operating Officer, Bounty Oil and Gas NL. And if you missed any part of that chat, you can catch the full interview on YouTube channels, Kalkine Media. So make sure to subscribe. And this is Sage reminding you to please stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine.